This wasn't just a stop. It was an insult, a humiliation, a line that should never have been crossed. A black CEO accused of stealing his own car, surrounded by officers who refused to believe the truth. But power moves both ways. Because within hours, the man they targeted would make a decision that shocked an entire city, firing the police chief himself. How does one racist act destroy an entire career in a single day? He wasn't just another man behind the wheel. He was the embodiment of hard work, discipline, and vision. A black CEO who had climbed from humble beginnings to leading one of the fastest-growing companies in the country. Every decision he made impacted hundreds of employees, every success built on years of sacrifice. His tailored suits, his sharp focus, and yes, his luxury car weren't symbols of arrogance. They were proof that perseverance could break barriers. That afternoon, the sun was high and the city streets buzzed with the rhythm of everyday life. He was heading from a business lunch to his office downtown, mind already on upcoming meetings and expansion plans. To passers-by, he looked like any other professional enjoying a productive day. But beneath that calm, polished exterior, society still carried an old habit, a tendency to doubt, to question, to strip away dignity based on skin color alone. He had no idea that within minutes, flashing lights would cut through his peace. Strangers would gather, and a single accusation would ignite a chain reaction that neither his money nor his title could shield him from. Because in broad daylight, on a busy street filled with witnesses, this CEO was about to be treated not as a leader, not as a success story, but as a suspect. The afternoon sun glared off the polished hood of his luxury car as he pulled to a stop at a red light. It was a normal drive, nothing unusual, until the sudden flash of red and blue lights filled his rearview mirror. For a moment, he assumed it was a routine stop, something minor. But as the officers approached, their expressions told a different story. There was no courtesy, no assumption of innocence, only suspicion. "Step out of the vehicle." The command was sharp, unyielding. Confused, he complied. He handed over his license, registration, and proof of ownership, but none of it seemed to matter. The officers circled the car, whispering to each other, treating him as though he had just been caught in the act of a crime. Then came the accusation. This car was reported stolen. The disbelief hit him harder than the sun overhead. This was his car, bought in full, registered in his name, proof sitting in his wallet, and in the database they could access within seconds. But they refused to check. Instead, the handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. Daylight turned into a stage, with pedestrians stopping to watch, phones raised, recording. A black man in a fine suit, shackled in public, accused of stealing what was rightfully his. Each passing minute chipped away at his dignity. Some bystanders whispered in shock, others muttered under their breath, already convinced by the sight of a black man in cuffs. The CEO felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him, the same tired narrative repeating itself, no matter how high he climbed. His success didn't shield him. His wealth didn't matter. His title meant nothing in that moment. He asked himself silently, what more must a black man do to be seen as equal? The officers didn't listen when he spoke calmly, didn't look at the documents he carried, didn't even bother to confirm the truth in their system. They had already decided who he was, and the humiliation was the punishment. The longer it dragged on, the more obvious it became that this wasn't just a mistake. It was profiling in its rawest form. And yet, they had no idea who they were dealing with, because this wasn't just another citizen they could dismiss or silence. This was a man with influence, connections, and a voice loud enough to echo beyond that street. As the crowd grew, so did the pressure. Videos spread quickly online, hashtags forming within minutes. What began as a false accusation was spiraling into something bigger, something the police department wasn't prepared for. And just when it seemed his humiliation was complete, A single phone call would flip the entire balance of power. The cuffs dug into his wrists, the heat of the pavement radiating beneath his polished shoes as officers pushed him against the car. He owned. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every second of his public humiliation. A CEO worth millions, reduced to a spectacle, treated as a thief in broad daylight. He spoke with measured calm, but inside his chest, rage thundered. Proof of ownership sat in his wallet. Company documents bore his name. Yet the officers ignored it all, convinced their authority outweighed the truth. Every second dragged like an eternity. Every whisper in the crowd another blade cutting into his dignity. Then came the breaking point. His phone, snatched at first, was finally placed back in his pocket, and with trembling hands, he dialed a single number. Not to plead for mercy, but to ignite consequences. On the other end was a city official who owed him more than a favor. Within minutes, the story that began as humiliation turned into scandal. The officers' radios crackled with sudden urgency. The chief of police had been notified, but instead of silence, the scene erupted. Reporters arrived, tipped off by social media. News vans lined the street. What began as a simple accusation had now become a public trial, not of him, but of the very system meant to protect. And in that moment, the balance shifted. He wasn't the powerless suspect anymore. He was the man whose call could end careers. The officers' grip loosened, their eyes darting nervously to the growing crowd. They had no idea that within hours, the man they had shackled in humiliation would be the one to deliver their boss's downfall. The question now wasn't whether he would walk free. It was how far the fallout would reach. The cuffs came off, but the damage was already done. His wrists bore the marks. His reputation had been dragged through the streets, and the world had seen the humiliation unfold in real time. Yet what the officers didn't realize was that their actions had lit a fire they could never control. Within hours, the videos spread like wildfire. News anchors replayed the scene, community leaders demanded answers, and city officials scrambled to contain the outrage. But the CEO wasn't interested in apologies or hollow statements. He wanted accountability, and he had the power to make it happen. That evening, in a boardroom filled with city leaders, he made his move. With evidence, influence, and public pressure behind him, he demanded the resignation of the police chief himself. No negotiations, no second chances. The same way he had been stripped of dignity in the open, the chief was stripped of authority in front of his peers. Revenge, delivered with the precision of justice. But even with that victory, the deeper truth remained. No matter how much success he achieved, the color of his skin had still made him a target. His story became a symbol, proof that racial profiling doesn't stop at the bottom, it claws at the very top. And as the city tried to move forward, the image of a black man in a suit, handcuffed beside his own car, lingered in the nation's mind. So the question is this: if even the wealthiest, most powerful black man can be treated as a suspect in broad daylight, what does that say about the millions who have no power, no cameras, no voice to fight back? Because one man's revenge may have toppled a chief, but the real battle, for dignity, for justice, for equality, is still far from over.